From all the indications, it's not yet Uhuru for the crisis-rocking People's Democratic Party, the PDP. A High Court of Rivers State has issued an order of interim injunction restraining Uche Secondus from carrying on as the chairman of the party, pending the hearing and determination of a suit challenging his continued stay in office. Justice Og Bassam of the Degema Division of the High Court of Rivers State, sitting in Port Harcourt, issued the orders while delivering a ruling in an ex parte application by some chieftains of the party in Rivers State. Secondus, according to the ruling, has been ordered to stop parading himself as a member of the PDP on grounds of his suspension from the party. When they battled, the chairman of the main opposition party has said if he and the party were taken to court, they would defend themselves. The latest court action against Secondus might not be unconnected to the failure of his National Working Committee, NWC, to conduct NEC meeting recently directed by the expanded Board of Trustees BOT meeting of the PDP. Sundu, things are falling apart.
They really are, aren't they, for Prince Uche Secondus? Although I have to say, this is not a final judgment of a court, it's an interim order. It still doesn't look good when we think about all the voices, the chorus of disapproval of his chairmanship of the party. You have that PDP caucus in the House of Representatives urging him to resign. You have members of the PDP National Working Committee who have actually resigned, saying that they cannot work with him, they don't appreciate his leadership. You have chieftains such as Olabode George telling him to just resign. All before his tenure ends in December. He's not even being allowed sort of a gracious exit. He's been pushed before he gets the chance to jump in December. But that's typical of PDP, as I'm sure you recall. I can think of only one chairman who actually got to bow out gracefully. The rest of them went through this.
But is it typical of PDP or typical of politics?
Well, look, today I wrote a piece, back page of this day, and I raised two questions. Those two questions are as follows. Is there a third force, an alternative to these two major political parties in Nigeria who at the moment are embattled? And they are not just embattled, they are embattled in a counterproductive manner that may not be to the interests of the electorate or to the parties themselves, as we seek a major force that can transform Nigeria and address all the concerns that Nigerians have been throwing up in terms of our experience within the democratic space since the return to civilian rule in 1999. And I think that what is happening to both the APC and the PDP will seem to be a reinforcement of this concern about the political party system in Nigeria, about the quality of political representation in Nigeria, and also about the future of Nigeria and the leadership recruitment process. How do we get the right kind of people to move this country forward? That's at a theoretical, principled level. As to the crisis within the People's Democratic Party, what has been established by the crisis in the last, by the court ruling, and the statements in the last 24 hours is that indeed you can reduce the politics, the crisis within the PDP to two things. The conflict between the governor of Rivers State. I mean, what is the business of the special advisor to the governor of Rivers State being the person who would announce a court ruling, as we have been told? Okay? So in other words, it's clear that he is some wicked, the governor of Rivers State. Whatever he says is at the heart, at the center of the crisis within the PDP. And also that at another level, there is a conflict at a personal level between him and Prince Uche Secondus, the chairman of the party, who incidentally got into that position more or less as a protege, as a candidate of the governor of Rivers State. The third point is that this, of course, is all about 2023 permutations and the power play about Nigeria. But what we have seen in both the APC and the PDP is that nobody is talking about the interests of ordinary people like us. Where will we be in 2023 as ordinary Nigerians, as citizens? What are the parties offering us? And that's why the earlier point I made about the alternative becomes relevant. However, the point needs to be made that the office of the chairman of the PDP and a spokesperson, his SA Media, our colleague Ike Abonye, has issued a statement. And the statement simply says that the office of chairman of the PDP, which is Secondus, is not afraid of any court ruling, and that they will be prepared to meet Nyesom Wike and other forces who want the chairman out of the party, in court. Okay, how soon are they going to file, their own response to the position taken by, the court in Port Harcourt, most conveniently? But I keep saying that the People's Democratic Party and also the APC, the two parties that seem to be on the battlefield right now, internally, in terms of their own internal politics and their own internal democracy, should learn from history. What we have seen, what history tells us, is that when a political party implodes from within, when it fails at the level of internal democracy, it will pay a huge price. And I urge the Nigerian people, to pay attention to what is going on in these political parties. If political parties are fighting among themselves and the leaders do not speak with one voice, why should we Nigerians invest our trust in them? Because Nigerians are at a turning point now where we want better progress, we want better governance, we want changes, we want the challenges of the moment and perhaps of the future addressed. Everyone in politics should think more about us, the struggling people of Nigeria.
Anyway, but the sad reality is politicians never think of the people. They claim they do, but they don't. That's all on the news headlines. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll have the trio of Rotus, Michael, Aaron to give us updates on Africa, global business, COVID-19. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the Morning Show here on Arise News. We're going into a business update now with Michael Wilson joining us from London. Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Good morning. Much brighter start to the markets today as opposed to yesterday. The big news was that Pfizer's drug was given US approval, and also there's more and more of a feeling that I know that we're going to wait to see what's said at Jackson Hole in Wyoming towards the end of the week, but more and more feeling that even if it is firmed up that there's going to be a taper as far as buying bonds are concerned by the Fed in the United States, it will be isolated from a rise in interest rates. In other words, the one coming well before the other. So that's the foundation of things. Let's take a look at the Asian markets and see what they're actually doing this morning. Shares in Asia Pacific rose on that news actually quite well. And also Hong Kong's Hang Seng up about 1.5%. Chinese tech firms listed in the city, Tencent, Meituan, Alibaba, and so on. However, automaker BYD's semiconductor business was among 40 IPOs which are suspended on Chinese bourses as the regulators investigate the deals. Mainland Chinese stocks, though higher, the Nikkei not doing quite well. As far as Chinese stocks actually listing and wanting to have IPOs in the United States, the Securities and Exchange Commission in the United States is making it even tougher for that to take place. Implications for investors and the risk that Chinese authorities will also interfere with company operations. So basically, after all this, when this first happened, Chinese listings in the United States and IPOs actually came to a standstill. We haven't seen that yet, but we may well do. So therefore, as far as the US was concerned yesterday, that big rally on Pfizer's vaccine being given full approval and so on, President Biden will also be telling employers to make sure that their employees are fully vaccinated, to urge them to do that. Can't command it, but urging it. As far as the infrastructure bill is concerned, this massive $3.5 trillion budget resolution, it's had a few stuttering steps overnight. I was going to come to you with the news this morning that they were about to discuss it in a positive way. Well, they sort of are, but there's still a lot of sticking points. So they're going to meet again today to try to get that passed. As far as home sales, existing home sales in the United States, this is always a good indicator. Cash-filled pockets, therefore causing a 2.5% rise in month-to-month house sales in the United States. Kamala Harris, I brought to you yesterday. She's in Southeast Asia. She's been talking in Singapore. She's been talking about China. She is trying to not get too involved with siding between China and the United States as far as Southeast Asia is concerned. But she did mention that Chinese actions and the sea are awful. But she also said that there's no need to choose between the United States and China as far as trade's concerned. She's not going to talk trade this time around, and she's going to Vietnam this afternoon as well. The first vice president, United States vice president, leaves to do that. As far as the UK is concerned, DD, you remember that? The Chinese ride-hailing company. It's been reported that it's actually halting its operations in the UK because of regulation. As far as the UK is concerned, we talked about staff shortages. It now looks like prisoners are going to plug the gap in the meat industry. Abattoirs, butchers and meat processors, very important to our sort of diet, of course, are actually trying to plug the holes. 14,000 job vacancies there. We also know, don't we, that as much as 60,000 HGV drivers shortage in this country. And that brings us on to what happened yesterday with the so-called flash PMIs. Flash PMIs, so-called because their first glance at purchasing managers' indexes, those are supposed to indicate, you know, the success or not of people's optimism as far as business is concerned. The staff and supply shortages took their toll here. Commodities, oil prices, crude soared back yesterday, given an improving picture of the stock market and thus what they feel about growth generally. Gold starting to look quite attractive again as we get maybe closer to a loosening as far as QE is concerned. And a note on Bitcoin I brought you yesterday of about £50,000 level over the weekend. Maybe new record highs, new investors getting involved and so on. Institutional world needs to get its head around this one way or the other. And the market's saying, if you look at all the technicals in it, heading towards $60,000 as the next stop. We'll wait to see about that. But it's still, as I stress this, it's still not a place to put your lifetime savings. It's far too volatile at the moment. That's the global view.
Michael, so I wouldn't, belabor you on that. But real quickly, I want to talk about two things. Number one will be about, the meeting coming up on the tail end of the week. The meeting coming up at the tail end of the week, that's the Jackson Hole meeting.
Yep.
So I think it was Mohammed El Rian, formerly of Pimley Co. He wrote a piece today, and he was talking about the fact that, Jay Powell should be bullish on his outlook and not too overtly conservative, because when you look at the headwinds that are affecting the economy now, things like the Delta variant and co, and the fact that stimulus checks are beginning to reduce because that is tapering off, it can actually slow the growth of the world's economy. So this so-called growth and rebound we have after 21 months of COVID-19 can actually be lost. And that depends on the body reaction or the vibes we will get of Jay Powell when he speaks at the Jack Hole meeting in Wyoming. What's your take on that idea?
We talked about this yesterday, didn't we? This is the article in the FT. What the article was saying was Powell has got to come one way or the other. He can't shelter behind relative anonymity and behind the markets and so on. He needs to use the Jackson Hole keynote speech opportunity to say something about what his and the central bank and the Fed's intentions actually are. I suspect that's not the way that he will deal with it, but who knows? He may well say something. If I were him, I'd still stress the fact that as far as inflation is concerned, as you've often observed, yes, that is a problem in the United States, but we're not sure about the employment picture. And if you remember, it's those two strands that he's really looking at before he's going to announce anything that the Fed is going to do to change course and to become and to indulge itself in more tightening of the economy. As far as the US economy is concerned, yes, all those things. It is difficult to get back people back to work. The furlough checks are beginning to dry up. But we did see a rise in existing house sales yesterday, which I told you about. Also, the approval of the Pfizer drug, I think, and also Biden's push. He can't command it, but he can urge employers to make sure that their employees are getting vaccinated. I think that's quite positive, and I think the markets were quite right to react for once in a positive way to this. So it's difficult. Remember, it's a huge economy, and it's like a big aircraft carrier. It'll take a long time to turn around. I'm not glossing over the problems. Of course, they're still there. We talk about them every day. But I feel as though if he's going to say something, I don't think he will, but he might use Jackson Hole as an opportunity to be a bit more clear about his intentions. If I were him, I wouldn't. I'd say that we're still looking at the main parts of the economy, which are now employment. We know all about inflation. It's now employment. And I'm going to hold fire until I've actually seen some significant and consistent indicators about the employment in the United States. That's the way I would go.
So many issues of interest, but we have very limited time, I'm told, so I'm going to be extremely brief. First, the Taliban in Afghanistan, they've drawn a red line in the sand with regard to withdrawal of troops by the US and the UK and NATO allies. But at the same time, they've named an acting governor of the Central Bank of Afghanistan. His name is Haji Mohammed Idris, to address the economic turmoil that is overtaking that country. What difference can that make? Considering the fact that the G7 will meet today, the UN Security Council will meet, and there are likely to be sanctions. And then as for Vice President Kamala Harris, going up and down in Southeast Asia, from Singapore to Vietnam, and talking about Indo-Pacific relations, and saying that, look, we will not leave you at the mercy of China. What does that really mean in real terms? Is this what you call often showboating?
Yeah, it's the job of a vice president is a very difficult one, because they are just a heartbeat away from being president, and at the same time they have no real power. So yes, it's about showboating, but what it does is she clearly has been given a firm brief by Joe Biden, say don't get involved in US-China things, leave that to the president of the United States, which I think we all, whichever way it goes, we all support that kind of thing. What she's talking about is something which is absolutely non-controversial. It's about cybersecurity, and it's about information flow between Southeast Asia, the big economies there, and also the United States itself, and also supply chains, which are absolutely vital. Every country needs supply chains. So I think of course she's showboating. That's what politics is about. But at the same time, I think she's getting into areas which are completely non-controversial and constructive. As far as Afghanistan's concerned, I wouldn't want the job of being central bank governor in Afghanistan, because I wouldn't know what I was dealing with. Are we going to be dealing with the informal economy that's dominated not by narcotics but by customs duties across the country? And human trafficking as well, or would I be calling upon the G7 and eventually the UN Security Council, which, as you say, is meeting later in the week, to say regard us as a proper country? I think until the IMF, the UN, and also, we're trying to work out. Johnson is calling, Prime Minister Johnson of the UK is trying to call the G7 and trying to say to them, what should our attitude towards Russia and China be? Shall we get them in to try to help us? Nobody's going to want to help until they have an idea of what the Taliban actually stands for. At the moment, we just don't know. China, if you really want the truth of it, China's in the pole position because it's already offering to help restructure the Afghan economy, and it's already, as we know, been mining for rare earth minerals in Afghanistan, of which it has plenty. But how do you deal with that? How do you extract them? What kind of market do they go on? What kind of payment would there be for them? All these are starting questions. So I really feel as though the acting governor of the Central Bank of Afghanistan is going to have some very tough things to think about.
Indeed, China put off the mark as usual. Well, thank you, Mr. Wilson. Our dependable Rota Sodiri joins us after the break for an Africa Business Update. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Our dependable Rota Sodiri is here to give us an African business update. Over to you, Rotas.
Good morning, Tundu. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning to all our viewers. Africa Business Update starts with a collaboration between This Day newspaper and MTN and WhatsApp. Essentially, This Day newspaper has announced that they will be launching their pretty much the newspaper edition, via a downloadable link for users of MTN Ziggy. MTN launched Ziggy late last year, and Ziggy is a bot, artificial intelligence bot that assists people in checking their airtime balance, refilling airtime, and carrying out a number of transactions. It's part of their digitized path to streamlining transactions going forward. So Prince Ndukar Ogbagbena, who is chairman and founder of the This Day Arise Media Group, announced this yesterday at a launch, and he said this was to commemorate MTN's 20th year anniversary, 20 years of doing operations in Africa's largest economy. MTN had first mover advantage, took the risk when the Obasanjo administration decided to privatize the telecommunications sector. Take a look at some of their numbers. You can see in terms of subscribers, 73.5 million subscribers. Second and third place at 50 million. At fourth place is about 12 million. If you look at market share, almost a 40% market share for MTN. Second and third place about 26-27%. So they've spent quite. They're market leaders. And so if you think about the commemoration of the 20th year anniversary, they talked about digitizing a lot of their operations, and this is a pathway to that. So for about 73 million or so MTN subscribers, they will be able to get the full edition on a daily basis of Nigeria's newspaper of record this day. You have to think about going forward. If you are looking ahead about WhatsApp and business, what about our implications, right? For everyone who can actually, instead of physically flipping through a newspaper, you can just download it on an instant messaging platform. You have to think about where WhatsApp is also going with payments. I think WhatsApp Pay finally has been allowed to move forward in Brazil, although the Brazilian government has been a little nervous about what it means for banks. Because if you're able to take your credits and pay for goods and services on WhatsApp, what does that mean for the banking sector? So this collaboration here to commemorate their 20th year anniversary, there's also implications just going down the line in terms of what this platform can do. More tech news. The SoftBank Vision Fund 2 has led a funding round of $400 million for OPay, which is a mobile payments platform. This funding round essentially values OPay at a staggering $2 billion. I mean, it's pretty much their bets on the future when it comes to where they think mobile payments are going to go in Africa. When you think about the financial inclusion gap on the continent, the payment space is where a lot of action is taking place as far as the technology sector is concerned with Nigeria. And look, again and again, pretty much every bit of big news coming out of Nigeria has come out of the tech sector. To put this into context, GTCO, in terms of market cap, is about 845 billion naira. You convert that at the INE window rate of 411, that values GTCO at $1.9 billion. So this OPay is essentially, as far as its valuation is concerned, higher than the biggest bank in Nigeria. You convert it at the parallel market rate, that's a 1 trillion naira valuation. Looking at SoftBank, the SoftBank Vision Fund 2 is no joke. We can take a look at their funding rounds for 2021. This is, of course, the baby of Masayoshi Son, who is I think he's Korean, but he became a Japanese citizen in the 90s. This is a conglomerate that focuses on technology. They say technology is part of what it is that they're trying to do. Again, this is the Vision Fund 2. There's a Vision Fund 1 that invested in Uber, WeWork, and another. They've had hits and misses, but if you look at this list here, you can see Klarna at the top there, which is a fintech fund, over 1.2 billion. There's a food delivery company after that, 1.1 billion funding round. You can see, there's food delivery, there's fintech, there's semiconductors, there's pharmaceuticals, there's loans. And OPay isn't there. They'll probably update their website, but it will fit right on there where you can see the fund that's about a $400 million or so fund. So this is huge as far as where mobile payments are going. Finally, the federal government of Nigeria says that it is going to launch its medium-term development plan for 2021 through to 2025 in October. This is supposed to replace the economic recovery and growth plan that elapsed in December 2020. The Minister of State for Budgets and National Planning, Mr. Ekene Agba, announced it at a workshop stating that this plan has to go through a number of committees. So it has to go to get the steering committee, then it has to go to the National Economic Council, then it has to go to the Presidential Economic Advisory Council before being implemented. Now, for anyone who's wondering, what about the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan? If you want to assess the targets, the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan was launched in 2017, and at that time, one of the targets was 7% GDP growth by 2020. 7%. Another of the plans was to create a more favorable business environment. A number of other things. Nigerians have to ask themselves if that plan actually met its targets. But by October, we'll have a new plan for 2021 through to 2025.
Which is the main point, Rotos. It's about input and output. It is possible to draw up these plans to have a talk shop. We have plenty of talk shops in Nigeria, which was why the late Olarotimi wrote a play, famous play, holding talks, that the tendency in Nigeria is to just hold talks. So you make these inputs, we don't see the outputs. And that's why I think that your concluding point is very relevant. We had the ERGP, what did we achieve with it? This medium-term National Development Plan, 2021 to 2015, is also supposed to focus on ensuring economic stability, lifting 100 million persons out of poverty. Are we going to get that? But the one I would like to comment more on is the media, which you brought up, which is this day, a newspaper collaborating with MTN to launch what you call the Ziggy chat box. Is that what you said? Well, I mean, I'm a dinosaur. I don't know how Ziggy works. But the major point is about two levels. I once gave a public lecture in which I argued, quoting an expert on the subject, that the newspaper would disappear by 2040. And the fear is that the death of the newspaper was predicted because of innovations in technology. How many people today get news by going to buy the traditional newspaper? So that was a major concern for us within the media space. But what we have seen is that we moved from the threat of the internet and technology to what has now become the age of convergence. By the age of convergence, it means both at the individual level and the institutional level, media houses are adopting other options. They are embracing technology. What Walter Benjamin referred to as the technical reproducibility of the age. So we live in an age in which the only way businesses can survive is by innovation. I think that's one of the points also by Drucker, who is an expert on how businesses should innovate. So perhaps the death of the newspaper that has been predicted will not happen, because newspapers now are on all the available platforms in the age of technical reproducibility. And that, I think, is what the This Day newspaper establishment has been doing. This Day, has been ahead of many innovations in this business. I've been here for about 36 years, and I've seen a This Day newspaper that introduced color, a This Day newspaper that introduced other measures. The back page column was introduced by This Day. In fact, it was the computerization process in newspaper business in Nigeria was introduced by This Day, and it was This Day editors that first began to write SUVs in this country. But they've now moved on to the WhatsApp, and I guess that's part of embracing innovation and showing an example that I believe that other newspapers in Nigeria would embrace. So I congratulate the chairman of the This Day group on this, and we hope that the partnership between This Day and MTN will succeed. Although I don't know what you people call a Ziggy. I said it yesterday.
It's a chatbot.
Okay, I will learn.
It's a chatbot.
I'll look at it. I've talked about the theory,
Yeah.
but when it comes on stream, I'll try to embrace it.
And Dr. Bati, don't worry, I'll use OPay to manage your account for you since you're scared of online banking. But I'm really excited at what OPay has done. And increasingly, when you see a lot of funds, you see them going to Fintech because of the low level of financial inclusion. And Africa is the next frontier point to all of this. I mean, I think Zimbabwe is always a case study for me. When the currency fell hard in Zimbabwe, you saw the likes of cryptocurrency cropping up. You saw the likes of peer-to-peer money cropping up. And that's what OPay has done. And in the space of 2 years, they've been able to actualize this. And the funny thing about OPay is it's an ensemble. So you've got ride-hailing in there, you've got, you know, grocery stores, you've got e-commerce market, everything put together in the app, and you have a caveat of payments there. So payments, it's an aggregation of so many things. And there, by extension, they are in the media business. They're one of the largest aggregators of media in Africa now with their Opera Mini site, and people are part of that. It just shows that, yeah, there are funds out there for you to do exciting things. And it's not just only going to be OPay. There are many to come. And I'm excited for Nigeria. Nigeria's got 2 unicorns now. IntoSwitch is a unicorn. A unicorn is a company that is valued over $1 billion US. IntoSwitch is 1 unicorn. And now OPay, you know, is another one. You know, but the argument would be, are they really Nigeria? But they're out of here. They're working out of here, even if they're Chinese. So we can still claim them. Then Flutterwave too is another unicorn, you know. And maybe once Paystack raises more money, they did 200 million. Yeah, Kuda Bank too. You know, so we've got like 4 or 5 unicorns. And when you look at the valuation of all these unicorns, juxtapose them with the traditional banks. They've beaten the traditional banks. I'm sure the traditional banks are regretting why they didn't invest early in these businesses. So what the traditional banks should do now is they should play big in the fintech sector, start disrupting. Rather than fintech companies going to look for vision fund from Masayosha Son and the likes, the traditional banks should start looking for fintech, investing in them, and then scaling with them, because fintech will scale faster, and there's a nexus between telecommunications and money. Look at what M-Pesa did in Kenya, and that's the motto all of us should follow. M-Pesa has taken over Kenya by Safaricom. You know, once they open up the space for telecoms to be able to play big in fintech in Nigeria, goodness me, don't be surprised. MTN might be the biggest bank. Glo might be the biggest bank on the likes in this country when all of this possibilities start to open. A lot of things are happening in tech.
Well, it's really good to see another unicorn, another mega round. Great.
Yeah.
But I want to know why we've been rudderless from your report, Reuters, from December 2020 till October 2021, when we're going to get the new economic plan. What is that lapse about? I'm puzzled.
The Minister of State for Budgets and Financial and Planning said that it's because they have to get all the stakeholders involved to do. So
waiting for it to
stakeholders. That's what he said. He said stakeholders.
Oh.
Stakeholders.
Right.
Yeah.
Dr. Abati, what's that thing you said again about talk from the Ola Rotimi book?
Holding talks.
Holding
by Ola
talks.
Rotimi.
Yeah. Holding talks with the stakeholders.
Amazing stuff.
Anyway, thank you very much, Roto.
Thank you.